This Pretzelman 945 here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm making a review of an anime that I just finished, which is Parasyte. I literally just. I know I record these kinds of reviews a lot where I just finished an anime a few minutes ago, but this I literally, not even a minute ago, finished the final episode. So, I think this is like as fresh as my thoughts on a show could possibly be. So we're going to talk about it. The Parasite was a really good show. Really good show. Um, I don't know where to start. I think Parasite was a really interesting show because it was able to, how do I put this? It was able to ask the right questions. And what I mean by that is it introduces this very interesting concept of parasites and the fact that take over humans. That's the whole idea behind the show. And then what this allows it to do is explore a lot of really interesting questions and possibilities of in this sort of hypothetical scenario where these things do exist. It seems like it asks all of the right questions in terms of what types of things is the audience wondering about, like or maybe not like wondering about, but the types of things that happen in the plot and um the the sort of how to put it, the things that happen in the show are a I think it's a good reflection of what the audience expectation is. And I think that it maintains a good balance of revealing information that the audience wants to know, and also the audience didn't know they wanted to know. So therefore there is sort of this nice balance of both a release of information that is satisfying versus learning new things that is also satisfying, but in a different way. And I think that these two aspects are balanced quite well. And I think that that is the real strength of Parasite's plot. Um, and just the general way that it develops. I think that most of these correct questions are sort of asked through Shinichi's experience, who, in my opinion, is by far the best character in this show because he was a fascinating protagonist. I think that he not only has a very realistic reaction to how getting a parasite in and losing the right arm of his body would work essentially. um the relationship that him and Migi have and the way that they're able to coexist, but the way that this also causes a lot of identity crises for Shinichi's character as to whether he could label himself as human or not was just extremely interesting to me. And I think that most of these questions that are correctly asked are done so the most through Kiniki. But there are several great side characters in this show where the same purpose is sort of achieved. Um, One of my favorite side characters, maybe my favorite side character actually, is Origami. And no, it's not just because of the lock-in meme. Even though when I finally got to that moment, it was hilarious to see like where that came from properly. I think that Origami was a really interesting character because he's like this. Not only is he introduced very late, like he's introduced in episode 19, like no, it's end of 18 actually, and like most of his introductions in 19, so like very late in a 24 episode show to have a new character introduced in episode 19. um but he serves his purpose really well. He's like this serial killer who can supposedly tell the difference between human and parasite. um and he serves that purpose well, but even more so, he serves as like this kind of interesting counterpoint where like by this point in the plot most of the most like people know what a parasite is. At least most of the major players in the story know what a parasite actually is, and they know how to deal with it. um uh And Origami, I think, represents a great one of those characters um, because he, he is like sort of just in a way kind of a monster himself with the fact that he is a serial killer. Um, and so that being used to sort of like redefine what the definition of a monster is so late into this show, where like a definition it seemed like had already been set upon as it was used to describe the parasites, was quite interesting to me. Another character that I found immensely interesting was actually the mayor, who you're convinced that he is a parasite the entire time, and then he ends up dying, and it's this crazy reveal that he's actually a human. And I think that this was just a fantastic, like, parallel of the progression of the story up to that point, and a fantastic representation of that parallel, exactly. Representation of the progression of the story up to that point. Um, so as a result, I really, really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed his character. Um, I mean, Tomino Ryoko was obviously one of the most prominent side characters. But and that's because the majority of her interesting questions come with the fact that she has a child. And I think that the fact that she has a child and that consistently plays a consideration in her actions up until her death, also made her a very interesting character that I felt like the right kind of questions um, were asked through. There we go. Trying to think. What other side characters do I want to talk about? Hmm. I think there were other side characters I could mention, but I think that the ones that I mentioned are the ones in which the kind of right questions I was referring to are asked through the best, these characters, and therefore executed the best. Um I didn't really have. I mean, in terms of my problems with the show, I'll be honest. Like, this is like much more of a nitpick, but like, Kana was kind of annoying. Like, Jesus, girl, get over it. He rejected your ass already. But I mean, she ends up dying, so like, it's not that bad. If I had any criticisms of the show, it's that I do feel like the ending was unfortunately quite underwhelming. Um, I feel like I've seen shows of this nature that really try to say something interesting about the human condition, like Parasite does. Examples being like Monster and Devilman Crybaby. Even though Monster doesn't have like superhuman elements, Devilman Crybaby very much does. So I think that might be a better example for this. And it feels like, despite the fact that there's quite a bit of change that happens through all the right questions that are being asked, it kind of feels like it just reverts to nothing. Whereas in a similar example to the show, Devilman Crybaby, like the entire world is changed. And that, I don't know, maybe I had like too high expectations of the nature of the story because of that, but like I it kind of felt underwhelming the way that everything just seemed to suddenly be back to normal sudden like out of nowhere. Um and just like all the detail that we get on Parasite is that they've learned to blend in better with human society. And I don't know, like like me having a fake out death was just kind of like, okay, really? And then like, he ends up okay, but then he ends up like, I don't know, leaving him behind. I don't know, just something about like the way that everything just suddenly seemed to revert, and I'm like, oh, okay, everything's okay again. Goto's dead now. The most dangerous parasites are gone. They're just blending in normal society now and stuff like that. Oh no. Um, it just felt underwhelming to me, like just the way that everything ended off. And I kind of feel like it was um after Parasite asked the show asked so many interesting questions through the characters, it kind of felt like it was trying to provide an answer to those questions when like a lot of them were already answered well enough, um and and like yeah, I don't know, it yeah, it just I wasn't I wasn't a huge fan of the way that just everything seemed to go back to normal. It just feels a bit lazy to me. Um uh but overall I really enjoyed the show. And yeah, I would recommend it. If solely for the reason that you see the moment where the lock-in meme emerges from, because I had a great time finding that out. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.